Bienvenidos a ROLLCAST 816. Si estás escuchando esta intro es porque te cansaste de escuchar la anterior, así que te ahorramos el trabajo. Vamos a hablar de rol, vamos a hablar de anécdotas y vamos a hablar de un montón de cosas que no tienen nada que ver con ninguna de las dos anteriores y así todo tiene sentido. Créenos que te vas a divertir. Pasá y busca un lugar para sentarte que ya arrancamos. Hola, ¿cómo están? Yo soy Juan.
Yo soy Augusto, ¿cómo andan?
Tenemos hoy una entrevista específica con Scott Fitzgerald, que es el autor de Core20 o Core20, como le vamos a decir probablemente nosotros. Así que no vamos a dar demasiado preámbulo, va a estar subtitulado, como normalmente hacemos.
No se preocupen.
Y bueno, nada. Scott, welcome now. Sorry for all the technical mumbo jumbo.
No worries.
So, we've been actually kind of in awe of how little, let's say, I don't want to say like coverage, but how little buzz the actual project got. I really thought it will be like massive by now. And I've been looking for, for several other media outlets that were covering it. And I deemed it so important for the history of the D20 system that finding almost no one talking about it kind of shook me. It's a project that has been on the works for what now? 2 years officially, but according to your blog, like 14.
Yes,
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's had a very long birth process, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not that worried about the buzz, as you say. I mean, there's lots of other great games out there. It's been a slow process kind of getting here. I'm much more interested in getting the game in front of people who are interested in it, getting them to have a good solid look at it. Lots of people are looking at it. Lots of people playing it right now.
All right.
I'm getting wonderful feedback from folks, which is really what I wanted to do at this point.
Yeah.
This definitely wasn't, at some point, the next stage will be figuring out what to do with the game in terms of a crowdfunding campaign, in terms of putting it together with a proper presentation. Right now, I just wanted to focus on just talking to folks who are playing the game and having fun, and talking to folks like yourselves who are interested in talking more about it and helping me to get the word out. So it's all been great.
I mean, I wasn't trying to come across as, you should be doing more, but it got my attention that it wasn't the case.
Yeah, I mean that the actual playtest is like so comprehensive. It's it's kind of massive. You would think that, and it's all it's free. I mean, it's easily available if you know where to look. So I would think, I'm with Juan in this one, it's like you would think that it would get a little more, coverage.
More traction, yeah. It's basically that. But it's just our appreciation on the topic is like nothing. I mean, and for many people that maybe don't know who you are, I think that has our impression on the subject has much to do with your pedigree, because you are not a new face on the blog. Yeah, you've been here for a while now. So if you can,
like a short rundown of your,
a short
page. Yeah.
I've been working in RPGs and working on Dungeons and Dragons specifically since 2004.
Yeah.
So just 20 years now, pretty much, just over 20 years. I think the first
so
project
you
I started was
were writing in 3.5, 3.0.
3.5 is when I started.
Okay,
I read
cool.
3.0.
Yeah.
I started freelancing during 3.5. I think not long after 3.5 launched, like maybe 6 or 8 months, if I'm remembering correctly. So I worked on a lot of 3.5 stuff. I've been freelancing most of the time that I've been working in RPG since 2004. I've been freelancing for Wizards of the Coast.
Okay.
I've never worked for Wizards of the Coast. I've never worked at the office. But I've worked on more books than many people who work at Wizards of the Coast. I've certainly worked on D&D longer than many people who are at Wizards of the Coast right now. You know,
Yeah.
I've been so incredibly fortunate, so incredibly lucky to have been able to do that. So I worked on 3.5 for Wizards of the Coast. I worked on a lot of 4th edition for Wizards of the Coast. I worked on the D&D Next playtest, both editing and did some writing. And then have been working on 5th edition since it came out. The first big assignment I had for 5th edition was I got to edit the monster manual.
Oh,
and I was the editor for about half of the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I did proofreading on the player's handbook.
Awesome.
As well.
very cool.
So yeah, it was a wonderful process. It was a great experience doing that.
Interesting. So yeah, what I find interesting is that you, I mean, with all this background, you have decided to actually use it and I don't know, make the maybe the D20 system to end all D20 systems, something like that. How would you like describe your, I mean, Core20 project?
Yeah, the Core20 project really came out of a desire on my part to, I wanted to play D&D in a different way. And I spent a lot of time.
Don't we all?
Yeah.
It's basically.
Yeah.
When I started playing, my first RPG was 1st edition AD&D. I started playing in high school way back. And I absolutely loved it. I fell in love with it. The game changed my life. The game saved my life in a very real way.
Yeah.
My second RPG was the Traveler RPG, the science fiction game.
Yeah.
And one of the great things about starting with AD&D and then switching to Traveler was just the different approach. The approaches of the two games was very different. AD&D, as you know, as with 5e, it's a very archetypal game. You have character classes that sort of fit into a specific niche. You know, the warrior, the wizard,
the barbarian,
Yeah, Traveler didn't have character classes per se. Traveler had different paths you could take with your character.
Right.
But you could basically do anything you wanted, right? You could take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You could decide, okay, I'm good at this. I want to be better at it. And I don't care that much about the other thing that I'm good at. You could really customize and fine tune your character to some degree.
Yeah.
And I really love that. And like literally back in high school, I thought I would love to play a version of D&D that does this. And I just kind of expected that at some point somebody else would write one. So I just thought, oh, I'll just sit back and wait for that. And I waited a long time and it didn't happen. And then I waited some more and it didn't happen. And then I started working on D&D and it still hadn't happened. And at some point I finally just got the inspiration playing a long-term game with some friends of mine, friends who I started gaming with in high school, who I'm still playing with today. And I just thought we could do something a little bit different here. And I started to experiment. And so the very first version of Core20, which was at that point just house rules for taking 3.5 and turning it into a game with no classes and no levels.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like 30 pages saying, okay, here's how to look at what's in the player's handbook and use it in a slightly different way. And that was in 2010, and that was the starting point for the game.
Okay.
And just as we kept playing it, and as other folks were interested in it and passed it on, it was like a closed alpha playtest, I guess you'd say. Because I knew it wasn't anything that I could put out at that point, because it was just bits and pieces.
Yeah, right? I get it.
You know, but from that, as we kept playing and as I kept tinkering with it, it started to evolve into something that at some point I realized could be a full system and was something that I wanted to work on that way.
That's great. And you keep working on editorials, like freelancing and stuff for other companies, or you are?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, I haven't worked on anything for Wizards of the Coast for a little while, but I do a lot of work. I work for MCDM. I do a fair bit of editing for them, Matt Colville's company. And I work with James Intercasso, who's their lead designer and a very good friend of mine, extraordinarily
that's pretty cool.
talented designer. I do a lot of work with Mike Shea, who you may know as Sly Flourish.
I know him.
Does a lot of blogging. Has a very popular
the one that does
YouTube
the
channel,
Lazy
and Patreon,
DM, right?
The Lazy DM books.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I do a lot of work with Mike. I do a lot of work with other companies. And then the time that I have left over, I focus on my own stuff.
Yeah, it's been
over the last couple
a
of
side
years
project for all this
yeah.
time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, you are 24 hours on RPGs, which is like, I mean, it's a dream. We do have our 9 to 5s that has nothing to do. Well, mine kind of does.
Well, you work in a video game.
I work in
company.
video games,
Don't
so but and well, he does catch bad guys for a living. He's not a cop, but kind of.
I work in a prosecution's office, in a prosecutor office, like the district attorney kind of thing.
Right.
So it's,
Wow.
I don't know. It's,
I mean,
as you said, RPGs save us in different ways.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
so yeah, but I find it very admirable that you became the change you wanted to see in the D20 system. That's very nice.
Yeah. So I think, like on a lot of different ways, like not just looking at the rule set and the idea of taking D&D and D20 fantasy and making it a classless, level-less system, something that was much more free-form, gave you a lot more options for character building. But I mean, one of the reasons that it's taken me as long to put out like this full play test as it did is that I realized as I was getting close to the point where the game felt fairly complete.
Okay.
I realized that I didn't want to put it out as sort of like 60% or 70% of what the whole thing could be. I really wanted to finish it. I wanted to sort of address not just the rules, but a lot of other stuff that I had always wanted to try to tweak a little bit or to fix in D&D. So the game has what I think is a much more robust lineage system. So lineages, ancestries, races, whichever version of the game you're looking at. And that was something that I'd thought about for a long time. That's something that I've been getting fairly passionate about in terms of the work I do for other people, is kind of trying to make the game recognize its colonialist roots and to try to move away from that as much as possible.
That's a really needed change, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not the person to be leading that. Charge,
I know, but it's
whatever I can do to help.
We try to make a change. Yes, it is like that.
Yeah.
So, what pieces will you recognize? I mean, we can tell you the same, but why would I be guessing if I can asking you directly? What pieces of other systems do you see yourself pouring into Core20?
There's lots of different things. Lots of
besides D&D, I mean.
Oh yeah. There's lots of inspiration from other games and other systems. There's a lot of stuff in the game that comes from just sort of variant D&D rules that have cropped up from time to time.
Yeah.
One of the things the game uses is a lot of opposed roles. So you don't, just as an example, you don't have a static armor class in the game. You have a defense modifier.
Interesting.
Right. So on one side you make a defense roll. You roll a d20, add your modifier. On the other side you make an attack roll. But that's not a new thing. That was an optional rule back in 3rd edition.
Yeah, it was
either in the 3E or the 3.0 or the 3.5 Dungeon Master's Guide.
Absolutely.
But and that's something that I'd always liked, and I'd experimented with it before. And as Core20 kind of came together, I realized that was a better fit for the system and the things I wanted to do with it. Banes and boons are a big part of the game. Which I borrowed from Robert Schwab's Shadows of the Demon Lord.
It's like a favorite system of mine.
He's a big fan,
Excellent. I actually asked for Rob's generous permission to do that, and he was fine with it.
If I may interject, I found that very interesting that you didn't restrict the Banes and boons to the 6s.
Right.
So
that was something
interesting.
Yeah, that was partly inspired by something that 5th edition D&D did, which is 5th edition kind of works with Banes and boons, but they never did it in a formal way.
Exactly.
So many effects and so many
advantages and disadvantages. It's a
advantage
system.
Disadvantage is one thing, but if you look in the 5e stuff, if you look at like the bless spell, if you look at the Bard's Bardic Inspiration.
Guidance,
there are so many different things where it's like take a D6 or take a D8 and roll that and add it to your D20. So 5e kind of almost set itself up to use boons and banes in a useful way, but then they decided just to not call it
Yeah.
boons and banes. It was just like each little thing is its own little subsystem.
Mhm.
Right. But I really liked that idea. I liked it much better than having bonuses, because I find it, for me, at least as a player, trying to remember bonuses is very difficult. But if
Yeah.
I can take a D4 and a D6 and put them next to my D20, I will remember to roll them every single
For sure.
Of course.
And it's less math, less head math to actually do once you telling people to roll. And the opposing role rules, sorry. I think it's maybe the most appealing approach to D20 systems. And the reason why, for us at least, is that we played 5th edition for I don't know, straight 7 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
Eventually we had enough. It's okay, we're done. We're just,
So we have a background of playing, 3.5 and Pathfinder first edition or whatever.
So after 100 episodes of the podcast about 5th edition, we had enough. So we didn't want to play anymore. We didn't want to talk about it anymore. We felt that the product was drifting away from what we loved or we used to love. So instead of bashing it, we just, took a little detour,
Drifted away.
and that's it.
That's nice, yeah.
Yeah, and we went head on Pathfinder 2. It's a fun new system. It's a bunch of things to experience, stuff like that. Well, we tried to keep playing Starfinder, which is PF1, but in space. And then you quickly realize that it's 3.5 or 3.75.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the ass to actually run it today. You have to remember a bunch of bonuses, explain the system from scratch to someone new to TTRPGs. Yeah. It's awful.
Especially after playing Pathfinder 2nd edition, which I know we're here to talk about Core20, but I must say that the free action system is really cool. So it's a neat idea. So once you go down that route, it's hard.
Going back,
it's
to standard bonus free reactions. The thing is that we clashed with the D20 success or do nothing for the rest of the turn for a really long time.
Yeah, that was the point. It's
and it's completely frustrating. My brother and Augusto tends to really have really bad luck when rolling.
Yeah, my rolls suck.
So it's okay, your go, rolls at 2. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, that's
go.
my turn.
Yeah. That's it. It's
that's
So when we introduced our audience to Core20 in the Discord server, people were really excited about that. About not having to hit a brick wall that is a D20 versus or bust.
Yeah. Because it not only incorporates the opposed roles for things like attacking, but it also has this degrees of success, table, incorporate it, which I found it's really interesting. Both things at the same time, they play with each other. It's interesting.
Yeah. It was something that, that was honestly one of the last parts of the system to come together. And it grew out of the way that I've always handled skill checks. And this is not a new thing. Lots of DMs running D&D do sort of an ad hoc sliding scale of success for skill checks, because that's pretty straightforward, right? So I wrote that up first. And then as I wrote it up and as I actually codified and came up with sort of some guidelines, I realized this could actually work really well for attack rolls and for saving throws as well. And I thought, what would that look like and what would it feel like? And the thing that I was most surprised about, the thing that I'm most delighted about, is not just that it makes the game a little bit more interesting from the player's perspective, because you're not dealing with that, okay, I've tanked this roll, I now need to just sit back and do nothing until my turn comes around again. Because in a big game with a lot of people, especially like in a complicated battle, it can take a long time for your turn to come back.
Yeah.
And then if you do that a second time again, you're like, okay, now I'm, and it just it gets pretty tedious. Yeah. And it wasn't just that though that made things interesting, because you got much more of a chance of doing something, even if it's not the thing you wanted to do. It was the idea of giving the players the opportunity to say, okay, you've scored a hit, but your hit has a complication. You tell me as the GM what that means.
Right.
What do you want? How does that look in your head, thinking about yourself in this particular situation, right? And it's fun because, I mean, for a lot of players, they just like the basic options, and there are basic options you can always fall back on. The one that is really easy to use, especially if you're playing a martial-focused character, is if you get a hit with a complication in combat, then your complication is, I'm just going to deal half damage to him.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't get a full hit, but I'm going to wear this guy down.
At least you did something, right? It's like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's interesting when you get into other options, like one that comes up a lot in my games is if somebody's attacking and they know that their ally's coming in right after them, they're going to say, I hit this guy, but I don't do any damage, but I knock him off balance a little bit.
That's great.
So that when my partner comes in on the next round, they're going to have a benefit to their attack. Their attack is easier because I helped set them up.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of, the degrees of success in PBTA games. It's like the PBTA games that have combat, the usually is you either do damage or like impose a condition or a debuff
or
kind
you
of thing.
put the enemy somewhere you want, or you leave him like stumbling.
And that makes for interesting choices, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I like the PBTA approach, definitely. But the one thing that I really wanted to do was to make it more narratively flexible.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, as a DM, the best thing that can happen to me is if somebody gets like a skill check with a complication, or they make a successful attack with a complication, I want them to tell me something that will surprise me, right? I want them to say, okay, here's what I want to happen. And I want to be able to go, cool, right? Because I wouldn't have thought about that myself, right? I wouldn't have thought that was going to be part of the fight. And I like the way that the system as it's set up now can turn die rolls into a little bit more of narrative. Because one of the problems with D&D, because D&D is a combat-focused game, the way that most people play it, right?
Absolutely.
The narrative of combat is usually I hit or I miss. Right? Historically, and that's that definitely tells a story, but it doesn't necessarily tell an interesting story for me.
I think it falls on the DM's back to actually narrate hit points and stuff like that, like you're wearing the opponent down, and every time you don't hit the CA. Sorry, the AC. CA, it's in Spanish. AC. What did I do? Did my attack bounced on the armor, or did something? It's as a DM and both as a player, asking a player to tell you how the attack was, do it in a narrative fashion. Well, all he's doing is missing or hitting an awful armor class. I think it's like a torture, actually telling a player to, no. Tell me how you miss. I don't want to, man. I'm missing. I've been missing for 3 turns in a row. Fuck you. I don't want to tell you how I miss. I'm missing. So yeah, I think that puts a lot of narrative charge on the back of the DM, while your system gives the player a chance to actually, tell you, okay, I'm not doing exactly what I wanted, but I can, use the back of my sword to position myself that way, leave it open to that thing. And I think it's really necessary to actually stray away from the black or white hit or miss system. I think that in 2024, we cannot be missing and doing nothing for the rest of the turn.
It feels like a disservice to the rest of the system and to the players and to everyone's time, But that back and forth is really interesting. And now that Juan mentioned hit points, another thing I found very interesting about Core20 is that you did something we really like. You separated defense points from critical points. It's like two kind of hit points. So would you like to elaborate on why did you do that?
I did that because I've always been kind of dissatisfied with that question in D&D way back to the very first editions of the game, of what do hit points actually mean?
Yeah.
What do they represent?
Exactly.
Right. I can tell you this about that hit point system. That's actually the oldest part of the game.
Oh, really?
Because it's actually built around a system, like a house rule that I used for AD&D when we were playing.
Yeah.
It was set up quite a bit differently back then, but it was that basic idea of let's split up the hit points the characters get, right? And we'll make some of them defense points and we'll make some of them critical points. And critical points represent your actual bodily health,
Yeah.
right? How much damage your body can take before it just stops working. And defense points are your ability to get out of the way of an attack that would have taken your critical points down, right? So it wears at you, wears you down, you know, like a touch wound, a flesh wound, right? It slows you down a little bit, makes you less robust. At some point, it will catch up to you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't represent the actual physical, like the hard physical damage.
Exactly.
Juan
mentioned Starfinder. Starfinder has the stamina points, which is
okay. Yeah, well, there was an optional system for 3.5.
Exactly.
Which did that. Which was, I think it was taken from the Star Wars D20 game originally.
Yeah.
So
I remember actually playing Star Wars D20, and I remember that people will correct me on this one. But lightsabers used to bypass stamina and go straight into health. If you got hit by a lightsaber, that was like the big thing, right? The lightsaber doesn't care about armors. If you got hit, you got hit. And you are stabbed with a lightsaber that goes straight to your constitution points, which was a bummer back then.
It really hurts. Yeah, it hurts. Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's a fun system to use just because to me, it feels more realistic. And I know that it's strange to talk about realistic in a fantasy game.
We know.
No. But we always say you have reality and realism, and they're not the same. So there is a place for realism in fantasy.
Absolutely.
And it's fun. I mean, it does things interesting to the narrative of the game. Right? Because like a character who knows they've got a certain number of hit points, they've got, so many critical points and so many defense points.
Yeah.
The first time they take a critical hit in combat, right, it changes the tone of the fight.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, okay, I am now more vulnerable than I was a second ago. And it works the same in the other direction. The first time a monster gets crit by somebody, okay, we've now got an edge on this guy. We've got a leg up, right? We are doing better than we were just a second before, right? Sometimes it can make combat swingy in some ways. I was running a play test just a few weeks ago, and I crit 4 times in the first 2 rounds.
Oh, come on.
And as a result, the fight did not go well for the players. But that's something else that I also like, the idea that running away from a fight, fleeing a fight, should always be an option, and that's something that D&D has kind of lost over the years. Back in AD&D, that was a standard thing. You understood that it was possible to end up in a fight with a foe that would absolutely tank you. And in that event, you were like, "We can't do this. We got to go." And over editions, that kind of got worn away a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want to open a can of worms over that, but I think it's kind of a video gaming mentality that crept into some aspects of D&D. Maybe it's like if we're encountering this, from the player's perspective, if we are encountering this, it's because we should be able to,
unless it's a scripted death, which is another funny term that walked in. Oh, we're supposed to lose this. No, you must flee. Which is not the same. You don't stay at level 1 and take a punch from a dragon. You get out of there. Don't stay. It's like, I think that today DMs are expected to actually tell these kind of things beforehand, like saying, look, this game will be deadly. You will encounter things that you will not be able to beat. So if you think you are over your head, run. And the core system of D&D at least doesn't do that. It basically tells you that encounters are for being fought, because this game is 50% fighting. So fight. And to be fair, killing a character in 5e, it's nearly impossible. You can't kill them. It's like they're immortal. So
it's tricky, yeah. I think it's definitely an evolution. Like one of the big changes between first and second edition AD&D and third edition was the first edition to come up with the idea of like challenge ratings and encounter levels. The idea that there should be some math that you can apply that says, okay, if I do so many monsters of this CR against this many characters of such and such a level, right, then this will be a balanced encounter.
Yeah.
And prior to that, there was no such thing as balanced encounters. You kind of sometimes a fight was easy, sometimes a fight was hard, sometimes a fight was deadly, right? Yeah. And I think with the idea in starting in third edition, continuing in fourth edition, and definitely in 5e, with the idea that it should be possible to come up with this sense of whether an encounter is easy or moderate or hard or deadly, right? It feels like there shouldn't be any excuse to have to make a narrative choice about what to do in a fight, whether you want to leave a fight early, right? Or whether a fight is going to turn deadly because of circumstances. Right? What's going on around you on the battlefield might make you less or more effective than you expect it to be.
I think that also goes with the loss of mechanics, like the reaction roll, the good old reaction roll. It's like, are we going to fight this, I don't know, group of goblins? Or maybe they want to talk, they want to parlay, they want to, trade, maybe they're scared of us, maybe, I don't know. But since players now know, I don't know, not all players, but most players know that, I don't know, goblins are cannon fodder. It's like, if we want, we can kill them. We should. Should we? I don't know. It's up to us. It's like, I think it's lost something, but it's like play styles. I don't know. It's evolution in a way.
So Scott, what's your roadmap for Core20 in the upcoming months?
The roadmaps,
you tell me.
Yeah, just basically to continue the playtest, to keep trying to get the game in front of people, find out what people think about it, what they like. I am in the process of putting together some quick start rules. Cool. So sort of like a shorter, not like a smaller version of the game, but just some guidelines saying, here's how you can get into it really, really quickly, right? I mean, the issue with a game like Core20, where you have so many options, is that it's really easy to get sort of gobsmacked.
It can be overwhelming,
Analysis paralysis. It's like, how do I build the character I want? Because I know the rules will let me.
You dedicated 53 pages to skill checks.
Yes.
Which is a lot, and I love it. But many people can see this and be scared. And I think they shouldn't. I think it's one of the more interesting parts of the manual. But I think that at this point, we see books and manuals and player guides as a fantastic new discovery, and we tend to look at them with awe, like the waiting to be surprised, which is a thing that we are grateful for doing in the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Right now we are finishing indie month. We did like an entire month of just indie systems, one-page rule booklets, fanzines, like little books, and there's so many good ideas. There's so many RPGs coming out every week, every month. So watching you actually go and do Core20 in this nitpicky, really, really deep way. It's a
methodical, I would say.
It's really, really methodical, and I think that it's an old school approach to the newer school of design, which is keep it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I think like one of the things for me that I've always found about games is that what makes an RPG manual or a core book work a lot of the time is examples, And I can tell you from having worked as an editor for a long time, one of the first things that gets cut from a book, if a book needs extra space, like if you have the manuscript of the book, and the manuscript is 300 pages and you realize your book has to be 256 pages. So you have to decide what you're going to cut. And that's pretty standard for most publishing. Right. But in RPGs, one of the first things that gets cut is the examples. And I think if you look at a lot of different RPG manuals, 5e, Pathfinder, whatever, there are always sections where you're reading it and you think, I think I know what this is about. I'm pretty sure, but if they included an example, that might have made it much clearer. So
absolutely,
Core20 is a chunky book, for sure, the player's guide. But part of the reason for that is that it's got a lot of examples in it. Because I think that's an important way to explain how the game works. Right?
Yeah. But you also, I mean, when you were mentioning the the plethora of options and the need to like speed play along if you wanted to try it, you have actually included like some like packages, feed packages, and fast start options. They're there. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. The building your character chapter is intentionally set up with 3 different approaches. And the first 2 approaches are the ones that anybody who's new to the system, which is everybody right now, should absolutely check out, right? One is the idea that there's nothing, even though this is a system where you can build any kind of character you want. There's absolutely nothing wrong with just jumping on one of those traditional archetypal roles, So there's the warrior,
builds,
which is the fighter.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So you got all the iconic builds. So you can just basically pick one up and start playing right away if you want to. But you can also do something that you can't do if you're starting playing 5e or Pathfinder generally with a sort of like a standard character class, which is you can look at that and you can say, okay, I've got my iconic builds, I've got my 20 starting feats, right? That I'm going to take, but I don't really want these 2. So I'm going to take those off and I'm going to decide I'm going to do something completely unconventional for this.
That's great.
Amazing.
That's great.
So
it's something that we really appreciate, actually.
It's a fun process either way. One of the things I'm thinking about doing in the quick start rules is taking the kits that you can put together to build a character. So you can say, I'm going to take this weapon kit, I'm going to take this armor and defense kit, I'm going to take this skill kit, the packages that you can put together. And actually turn that into like a kind of like a card game. So you've got each of those packages sitting on the table and like you can sit around and say, okay, we're going to start this game, but you don't have your character yet. You're going to build your character as we play.
That's
right.
Cool.
And run through a starter adventure. So that you can say, okay, like the first thing that happens is the social encounter. And so one player is going to say, I think I want my character to be really good at investigation because I want to know whether this person is lying to us or not. So they grab that package and that's the starting point for their character.
That's great. Yeah.
I think that would be a lot of fun. That's been something I've been thinking about for a while.
I think that's really cool. We were playing a game that it's called Mission Impossible, PO as in paw print.
An animal paw.
Oh yeah.
And it's about 3 raccoons in a trench coat trying to save the world, which it's a quirky indie game, but it has one idea, which is if you can decide on one of the items for your class, pick it at the right time. Like when would you wish you had that item, and from that point on, that's your item. And I think it's for many new players, the amount of options, it's overwhelming, and sometimes picking, it's really, really hard. So having them to actually go through the motions to actually become who they are supposed to be, it's a great idea.
I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I used to actually, when I was playing 3.5, I used to do that sometimes for players who were having trouble with their skills. Because choosing skills in 3.5 was a very long
It's daunting,
process,
it's daunting.
Right? Yeah, and I used to just say, don't worry about it. Just wait till something happens in the adventure and decide whether you suddenly want to. Like, you need to jump a pit. Okay, I think I'm going to take jump.
That's a great idea.
So from that point on, this is what I'm good at. Right?
Yeah.
But you don't need to decide those things ahead of time.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
I like the mention of skills. I like the compromise you decided on. Making the skill groups. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was lifted pretty much directly from from looking at third edition and looking at fourth edition, kind of combining them, right? Because
Yeah.
third edition had this huge list of skills, which was very complicated.
It was.
Fourth edition had this short list of skills. It was very simple, but also felt a little bit too generic a lot of the
Yeah.
time.
Yes.
You know, so the idea of having the skill groups so that if you want to just focus on a bunch of stuff, that's what you focus on. But individual skills within the group so that if you want to focus on specific things, you can focus on those too. Part of what goes into the game, and like it's in the skill setup, it's in the feat setup in general, but the idea that I would love for Core20 to be a game where two different people can sit down and play it. One who's just, I'm not really into game stuff. I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking. I would like a lot of just nice, simple options.
Yeah.
Right. And the other person is, I love complicated stuff.
I love
want to read through
crunching.
this whole book.
Yeah.
I love crunch.
Yeah.
And I want them both to have exactly the same amount of fun.
That's great.
Right. And that's, you know,
Seems
you can
really
build,
feasible.
you can build straightforward, simple characters in Core20. They're every bit just as powerful as a character that somebody has meticulously tried to fine tune
Right.
with you know, different, you know, esoteric feats and stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And I like that idea because that's something that class-based games don't do as well. Like, you know, like in D&D, for example, the adage used to be, or the advice used to be, if you want to play somebody simple, you know, play a fighter, right? You know, start with a fighter, you know, start with a rogue, that sort of thing, and that was good. But even that in 5th edition is not as simple as it used to be, right? Because even if you start from the perspective of saying, I'm going to play a fighter, then you're like, okay, which subclass am I going to take?
Exactly.
Right.
Right. And that, you know, that in and of itself becomes another
An issue. Yeah.
another decision to be made. Right?
Yeah. For sure. Scott, we don't want to take any more of your time. We've been
You
talking
have been
for
extremely generous.
yeah. We're
very happy.
yapping
Thank
for
you.
like 45 minutes. So we will publish we are publishing your links everywhere in our Discord and on our channel. We're happy to talk about your system. We were waiting for this talk to actually launch a campaign in our Discord for
Yeah, you know,
our
we're gonna
community.
help you
Lovely.
play test it.
Yeah,
So that's
and
awesome.
one of our ideas is basically this: getting them to actually, you know, play and give you feedback. Give us
Absolutely.
feedback, and we can, you know, compile it and send it your way.
That would be great. Yeah.
Again, man, thank you and congratulations for a really, really good system. We
keep
actually
it up.
think it's amazing.
And we're
Well,
gonna
thank you. It's
be
very kind.
you're gonna be like paying attention to whatever happens in the coming months and whatever. So
Keep
if
us
you-
posted. If
Yeah.
Oh,
you-
absolutely. I will. Yeah.
If you see that, you know, you have some new supplements that you want to share with the community, we will be here. We'll
That
here
would
to
be
try.
great. Much
Okay, man.
appreciated.
Thank you a lot. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
Catch you next time.
Okay.
You bet.
Bye bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.